The Lockheed S-3 Viking is a four-seat, twin-engine turbofan-powered jet aircraft that was used by the U.S. Navy to identify and track enemy submarines. In the late 1990s, the S-3B's mission focus shifted to surface warfare and aerial refueling. The Viking also provided electronic warfare and surface surveillance capabilities to the Carrier Battle Group. A carrier-based, subsonic, all-weather, multi-mission aircraft with long range. It carried automated weapon systems, and was capable of extended missions with in-flight refueling. Because of the Viking's engine is a Euro-unregistered trademark low-pitched sound, it was nicknamed the Hoover after the vacuum cleaner brand. The S-3 was retired from frontline fleet service aboard aircraft carriers by the U.S. Navy in January 2009, with its missions being assumed by other platforms such as the P-3C Orion, Sikorsky Sh-60 Hawk, and Boeing FF Super Hornet. Several examples continue to be flown by Air Test and Evaluation Squadron 30 at Naval Base Ventura County/NAS Point Mugu, California for range clearance and surveillance operations on the NAVAIR Point Mugu range, and a single example is operated by the National Aeronautics and Space Administration at the NASA Glenn Research Center. Development. In the mid-1960s, the U.S. Navy developed the VSX requirement for a replacement for the piston-engined Grumman S-2 tracker as an anti-submarine aircraft to fly off the Navy's aircraft carriers. In August 1968, a team led by Lockheed and a Convair Grumman team were asked to further develop their proposals to meet this requirement. Lockheed recognized that it had little recent experience in designing carrier-based aircraft, so Ling-Temco Vought was brought into the team, being responsible for the folding wings and tail, the engine nacelles, and the landing gear, which was derived from LTVA-7 Casado and Vought F-8 Crusader. Sperry Univ Federal Systems was assigned the task of developing the aircraft's onboard computers which integrated input from sensors and sonobuoys. On August 4, 1969, Lockheed's design was selected as the winner of the contest, and 8 prototypes, designated YS-3A, were ordered. The first prototype flew on January 21, 1972, and the S-3 entered service in 1974. During the production run from 1974 to 1978, a total of 186 S-3As were built. The majority of the surviving S-3As were later upgraded to the S-3B variant, with 16 aircraft converted into ES-3A Shadow Electronic Intelligence Collection aircraft. Design. The S-3 is a conventional monoplane with a high-mounted cantilever wing, swept at an angle of 15 degrees. The two GET-F-34 high-bypass turbofan engines mounted in nacelles under the wings provide excellent fuel efficiency, giving the Viking the required long range and endurance, while maintaining docile engine-out characteristics. The aircraft can seat 4 crew members, 3 officers and 1 enlisted aircrewman, with the pilot and the co-pilot tactical coordinator in the front of the cockpit and the tactical coordinator and sensor operator in the back. Entry is by an entry door/ladder which folds out of the side of the fuselage. When the aircraft's anti-submarine warfare role ended in the late 1990s, the enlisted SENSOs were removed from the crew. In the tanking crew configuration, the S-3B typically flew with only a crew of 2. The wing is fitted with leading-edge and Fowler flaps. Spoilers are fitted to both the upper and the lower surfaces of the wings. All control surfaces are actuated by dual hydraulically boosted irreversible systems. In the event of dual hydraulic failures, an emergency flight control system permits manual control with greatly increased stick forces and reduced control authority. Unlike many tactical jets which required ground service equipment, the S-3 was equipped with an auxiliary power unit and capable of unassisted starts. The aircraft's original APU could provide only minimal electric power and pressurized air for both aircraft cooling and for the engine's pneumatic starters. A newer, more powerful APU could provide full electrical service to the aircraft. The APU itself was started from a hydraulic accumulator by pulling a mechanical handle in the cockpit. The APU accumulator was fed from the primary hydraulic system, but could also be pumped up manually from the cockpit. All crew members sit on forward-facing, upward-firing Douglas Escapac 00 ejection seats. In group eject mode, initiating ejection from either front seat ejects the entire crew in sequence, with the back seats ejecting 0.5 seconds before the front in order to provide safe separation. The rear seats are capable of self-ejection, and the ejection sequence includes a pyrotechnic charge that stows the rear keyboard trays out of the occupant's way immediately before ejection. Safe ejection requires the seats to be weighted in pairs, and when flying with a single crewman in the back, the unoccupied seat is fitted with ballast blocks. At the time it entered the fleet, the S-3 introduced an unprecedented level of systems integration. Previous ASW aircraft like the Lockheed P-3 Orion and S-3's predecessor, the Grumman S-2 Tracker, featured separate instrumentation and controls for each sensor system. Sensor operators often monitored paper traces, using mechanical calipers to make precise measurements and annotating data by writing on the scrolling paper. Beginning with the S-3, all sensor systems were integrated through a single general-purpose digital computer. Each crew station had its own display. The co-pilot COTAC, TACCO and SENSO displays were multi-purpose displays capable of displaying data from any of a number of systems. This new level of integration allowed the crew to consult with each other by examining the same data at multiple stations simultaneously, to manage workload by assigning responsibility for a given sensor from one station to another, and to easily combine clues from each sensor to classify faint targets. Because of this, the 4-man S-3 was considered roughly equivalent in capability to the much larger P-3 with a crew of 12. The aircraft has two underwing hardpoints that can be used to carry fuel tanks, general-purpose and cluster bombs, missiles, rockets, and storage pods. It also has 4 internal bomb base stations that can be used to carry general-purpose bombs, aerial torpedoes, and special stores. 59 sonobuoy chutes are fitted, as well as a dedicated search and rescue chute. The S-3 is fitted with the AL-39 countermeasure system and can carry up to 90 rounds of chaff, flares, and expendable jammers in 3 dispensers. A retractable magnetic anomaly detector boom is fitted in the tail. In the late 1990s, the S-3B's role was changed from anti-submarine warfare to anti-surface warfare. At that time, the MAD boom was removed, along with several hundred pounds of submarine detection electronics. With no remaining sonobuoy processing capability, most of the sonobuoy chutes were faired over with a blanking plate. Operational history. On February 20, 1974, the S-3A officially became operational with the Air Anti-Submarine Squadron 41, the Shamrocks, at NAS North Island, California, which served as the initial S-3 Fleet replacement squadron for both the Atlantic and Pacific fleets until a separate Atlantic Fleet FRS, Versus 27, was established in the 1980s. The first operational cruise of the S-3A took place in 1975 with the Versus 21 fighting Reed Tails aboard USS John F. Kennedy. Starting in 1987, some S-3As were upgraded to S-3B standard with the addition of a number of new sensors, avionics, and weapons systems, including the capability to launch the AGM-84 Harpoon anti-ship missile. The S-3B could also be fitted with buddy stores, external fuel tanks that allowed the Viking to refuel other aircraft. In July 1988, Versus 30 became the first fleet squadron to receive the enhanced capability Harpoon ISAR-equipped S-3B, based at NAS Cecil Field in Jacksonville, Florida. 16 S-3As were converted to ES-3A Shadows for carrier-based electronic intelligence duties. 6 aircraft, designated US-3A, were converted for a specialized utility and limited cargo COD requirement. Plans were also made to develop the KS-3A carrier-based tanker aircraft to replace the retired KA-6D Intruder, but this program was ultimately cancelled after the conversion of just one early development S-3A. With the collapse of the Soviet Union and the breakup of the Warsaw Pact, the Soviet-Russian submarine threat was perceived as much reduced, and the Vikings had the majority of their anti-submarine warfare equipment removed. The aircraft's mission subsequently changed to sea surface search, sea and ground attack, over-the-horizon targeting, and aircraft refueling. As a result, the S-3B after 1997 was typically crewed by one pilot and one co-pilot, an FO. The additional seats in the S-3B could still support additional crew members for certain missions. To reflect these new missions, the Viking squadrons were redesignated from air anti-submarine warfare squadrons to sea control squadrons. Prior to the aircraft's retirement from frontline fleet use aboard U.S. aircraft carriers, a number of upgrade programs were implemented. These include the Carrier Airborne Inertial Navigation System 2 upgrade, which replaced older inertial navigation hardware with ring laser gyroscopes with a Honeywell EGI and added digital electronic flight instruments. The Maverick Plus system added the capability to employ the AGM-65E laser-guided or AGM-65F infrared-guided air-to-surface missile, and the AGM-84 hours per carrot standoff land attack missile expanded response. The SLAM-ER is a GPS infrared-guided cruise missile derived from the AGM-84 Harpoon that can be controlled by the aircrew in the terminal phase of flight if an AWW-13 data link pod is carried by the aircraft. The S-3B saw extensive service during the 1991 Gulf War, performing attack, tanker, and ELINT duties, and launching ADM-141 TALD decoys. The aircraft also participated in the Yugoslav wars in the 1990s and in Operation Enduring Freedom in 2001. The first ES-3A was delivered in 1991, entering service after 2 years of testing. The Navy established 2 squadrons of 8 ES-3A aircraft each in both the Atlantic and Pacific fleets to provide detachments of typically 2 aircraft, 10 officers, and 55 enlisted air crew, maintenance and support personnel to deploying carrier air wings. The Pacific Fleet Squadron, Fleet Air Reconnaissance Squadron 5, the Sea Shadows, was originally based at the former NAS Agana, Guam but later relocated to NAS North Island in San Diego, California with the Pacific Fleet S-3 Viking squadrons when NAS Agana closed in 1995 as a result of a 1993 base realignment and closure decision. The Atlantic Fleet Squadron, the VQ-6 Black Ravens, were originally based with all Atlantic Fleet S-3 Vikings at the former NAS Cecil Field in Jacksonville, Florida, but later moved to NAS Jacksonville, approximately 10 miles to the east, when NAS Cecil Field was closed in 1999 as a result of the same 1993 BRAC decision that closed NAS Agana. The ES-3A operated primarily with carrier battle groups, providing organic Euro indications and warning Euro unregistered trademark support to the group and joint theater commanders. In addition to their warning and reconnaissance roles, and their extraordinarily stable handling characteristics and range, Shadows were a preferred recovery tanker. They averaged over 100 flight hours per month while deployed. Excessive utilization caused earlier than expected equipment replacement when naval aviation funds were limited, making them an easy target for budget-driven decision-makers. In 1999, both the ES-3A squadrons and all 16 aircraft were decommissioned and the ES-3A inventory placed in Aerospace Maintenance and Regeneration Group storage at Davis-Monthan AFB, Arizona. Though a proposed airframe known as the Common Support Aircraft was once advanced as a successor to the S-3, E-2 and C-2, this plan failed to materialize. As the surviving S-3 airframes were forced into sundown retirement, a Lockheed Martin full-scale fatigue test was performed and extended the service life of the aircraft by approximately 11,000 flight hours. This supported Navy plans to retire all Vikings from frontline fleet service by 2009 so new strike fighter and multi-mission aircraft could be introduced to recapitalize the aging fleet inventory, with former Viking missions assumed by other fixed-wing and rotary-wing aircraft. Iraq War In March 2003, during Operation Iraqi Freedom, an S-3B Viking from Sea Control Squadron 38 piloted by Richard McGraw Jr. launched from USS Constellation. The crew successfully executed a time-sensitive strike and fired a laser-guided Maverick missile to neutralize a significant Iraqi naval and leadership target in the port city of Basra, Iraq. This was one of the few times in its operational history that the S-3B Viking had been employed overland on an offensive combat airstrike and the first time it launched a laser-guided Maverick missile in combat. The first time an second-3B was employed overland during an offensive airstrike was during Operation Desert Storm when an aircraft from Versus-24, from the USS Theodore Roosevelt, attacked an Iraqi Silkworm missile site. On May 1, 2003, U.S. President George W. Bush flew in the co-pilot seat of a Versus-35 Viking from NAS North Island, California to USS Abraham Lincoln off the California coast. There, he delivered his mission accomplished speech announcing the end of major combat in the 2003 invasion of Iraq. During the flight, the aircraft used the customary presidential call sign of Navy One. The aircraft that President Bush flew in was retired shortly thereafter and on July 15, 2003 was accepted as an exhibit at the National Museum of Naval Aviation at NAS Pensacola, Florida. Between July and December 2008 the Versus-22 Checkmates, the last Sea Control Squadron, operated a detachment of 4 S-3Bs from the Al Asad Air Base in Al Aba Province, 180 miles west of Baghdad. The planes were fitted with LANTIRN pods and they performed non-traditional intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance. After more than 350 missions, the Checkmates returned to NAS Jacksonville, Florida on December 15, 2008, prior to disestablishing on January 29, 2009. Retirement equals. The final carrier-based S-3B squadron, Versus-22 was decommissioned at NAS Jacksonville on January 29, 2009. Sea Control Wing Atlantic was decommissioned the following day on January 30, 2009, concurrent with the U.S. Navy retiring the last S-3B Viking from frontline fleet service. In June 2010 the first of 3 aircraft to patrol the Pacific Missile Test Center's range areas off of California was reactivated and delivered. The jet aircraft's higher speed, 10-hour endurance, modern radar, and a LANTIRN targeting pod allow it to quickly confirm the test range being clear of wayward ships and aircraft before tests commence. These S-3Bs are flown by Air Test and Evaluation Squadron 30, VX-30, based out of NAS Point Mugu, CA. Also, the NASA Glenn Research Center acquired 4 S-3Bs in 2005. Since 2009, one of these aircraft has also carried the civil registration N601NA and is used for various tests. Potential interest equals, in October 2013, South Korea's Republic of Korea Navy expressed an interest in acquiring up to 18 ex-US NS-3s to augment their current fleet of 16 Lockheed P-3 Orion aircraft. In August 2015, a military program review group approved a proposal to incorporate 12 mothballed S-3s to perform ASW duties. The Viking plan will be sent to the Defense Acquisition Program Administration for further assessment before final approval by the National Defense System Committee. Although the planes are old, being in storage kept them serviceable and using them as a cheaper way to fulfill short-range airborne ASW capabilities left after the retirement of the S-2 Tracker than buying newer aircraft. In April 2014, Lockheed Martin announced that they would offer refurbished and remanufactured S-3s, dubbed the C-3, as a replacement for the Northrop Grumman C-2A Greyhound for carry-on-board delivery. The requirement for 35 aircraft would be met from the 91 S-3s currently in storage. In February 2015, the Navy announced that the Bell Boeing V-22 Osprey had been selected to replace the C-2 for the COD mission. Variants: S-3A, first production version, 187 built. S-3B, upgraded avionics, ANAPS-137 inverse synthetic aperture radar, Joint Tactical Information Distribution System, AGM-84 Harpoon launch capability, first flight September 13, 1984, 119 converted from S-3As. ES-3A. The ES-3A Shadow was designed as a carrier-based, subsonic, all-weather, long-range, electronic reconnaissance aircraft. 16 aircraft were modified, replacing the EA-3B Sky Warrior, and entering fleet service in 1993. The ES-3A carried an extensive suite of electronic sensors and communications gear, replacing the S-3A unregistered trademark air submarine detection, armament, and maritime surveillance equipment with avionics rex accommodating the ES-3 or Euro unregistered trademark air sensors. These modifications had minor impact on airspeed, reducing its top-rated speed from 450 ktas to 405 ktas, but had no noticeable impact on the aircraft's range and actually increased its rated loiter time. Because these aircraft were standoff indications and warnings platforms and were never intended to be part of an ingress strike package, this new speed limitation was considered insignificant. KS-3A, proposed dedicated air tanker with fuel capacity of 4,382 US gal, one converted from YS-3A, later converted to US-3A. KS-3B, proposed air tanker based on S-3B and utilizing the buddy refueling system, not built. US-3A, S-3A modified for carry-on-board delivery, capacity for 6 passengers or 4,680 pounds of cargo, retired in 1998. Aladdin Viking, conversion of 6 aircraft for overland surveillance and ELINT missions. May have dropped ground sensors in the Bosnian War. Bartrap Viking, S-3BS fitted with still classified modifications. Calypso Viking, proposed anti-smuggling variant, not built. Grey Wolf Viking, 1 aircraft fitted with AN/APG-76 radar in a modified cargo pod under the wing. Also dubbed Sea Stars in reference to E-8 Joint Stars, Orca Viking, avionics test bed. Outlaw Viking, 1 S-3B fitted with over-the-horizon airborne sensor information system, returned to regular S-3B in 1998. This particular Viking is now on display at the USS Midway Museum, located on the decommissioned USS Midway. NASA Viking, 1 aircraft was transformed into a state-of-the-art NASA research aircraft. The Navy's Fleet Readiness Center, Southeast and a Boeing facility in Florida enhanced the plane by adding commercial satellite communications, global positioning navigation and weather radar systems. They installed research equipment racks in what was once the plane's bomb bay. NASA's S-3B Viking is equipped to conduct science and aeronautics missions, such as environmental monitoring, satellite communications testing and aviation safety research. Operators, United States Navy, NASA. Aircraft on display, YS-3A, 157,993, NAS Jacksonville Aircraft Heritage Park, NAS Jacksonville, Florida, S-3A, 159,417, Celebrity Row, Davis-Monthan AFB, Tucson, Arizona. ES-3A, 159,404, Celebrity Row, Davis-Monthan AFB, Tucson, Arizona. S-3B, 159,387, Navy One National Naval Aviation Museum, NAS Pensacola, Florida, 159,412, NAS North Island, San Diego, California, 159,731, USS Yorktown at the Patriots Point Naval and Maritime Museum, Charleston, South Carolina. 159,743, Aviation Wing of the Marietta Museum of History, Dobbins ARB, Atlanta, Georgia, 159,755, NAS Pensacola, Florida, 159,766, USS Midway in San Diego, California, 159,770, Patuxent River Naval Air Museum, Lexington Park, Maryland. 160,599, USS Hornet at the former NAS Alameda in Alameda, California, 160,604, Palmer Air and Space Museum, Tucson, Arizona. Specifications. Data from Standard Aircraft Characteristics, General Characteristics, Crew, 4, Length, 53 feet 4 inches, Wingspan, unfolded 68 feet 8 in, folded, 29 feet 6 in. Height, 22 feet 9 in, wing area, 598 FTA², empty weight, 26,581 pounds, loaded weight, 38,192 pounds, max takeoff weight, 52,539 pounds, power plant, TUA, General Electric TF34 GE2 turbofans, 9,275 pound forces each, internal fuel capacity, 1,933 US gal of JP5 fuel, external fuel capacity, 2x300 US gal tanks, performance, maximum speed, 429 kn at sea. Level, Mach 0.79, 450 kn at 20,000 feet. Cruise speed, 350 kn, stall speed, 97 kn, range, 2,765 nanometers, 3,182 miles, 5,121 kilometers, combat radius, 853 kilometers, ferry range, 3,368 nanometers, service ceiling, 40,900 feet, rate of climb, 5,120 feet per minute, wing loading, 68.5 pounds FTA², thrust weight, 0.353, armament, up to 4,900 pounds on 4 internal and 2 external hardpoints, including, 10 500 pounds Mark 82 bombs, 2 1,000 pounds Mark 83 bombs, 2 2,000 pounds Mark 84 bombs, 6 CBU-100 cluster bombs, 2 Mark 50 torpedoes, 4 Mark 46 torpedoes, 6 mines or depth charges, 2 B-57 nuclear bombs, 2 AGM-65EF Maverick missiles, 2 AGM-84D Harpoon missiles, 1 AGM-84 hours per Carrot Slam ER missile. The 2 underwing hardpoints can also be fitted with unguided rocket pods or 300 US gal fuel tanks. Avionics, ANAPS-116C search radar, maximum range 115 mi, upgraded on S3B to ANAPS-137 inverse synthetic aperture radar. OR-89 forward-looking infrared camera with 3x zoom, ANARS-2 sonobuoy receiver with 13 blade antennas on the airframe for precise buoy location, ANASQ-81 magnetic anomaly detector, ANASN-92 inertial navigation system with Doppler radar navigation and TACAN, up to 60 sonobuoys. See also CP-140 Aurora, aircraft of comparable role, configuration and era, S-2 tracker, Fanny Ray Gannett, Breguet Eliza copyright, related lists, list of Lockheed aircraft, list of military aircraft of the United States. References, notes. Bibliography. External links, S-3B Viking fact file and S-3 Viking history page on Navy.mil, S-3 Viking, War Hoover, Naval Aviation News.